Cadet First Class Annalise Holland.
And I'm Cadet First Class Brian Swicegood.
And we are part of the United States Air Force Academy's 2020 iGEM team. So before we get into what our research group really does, I want to talk a bit about what iGEM actually is, because not a lot of people know what iGEM works for. So iGEM stands for the International Genetically Engineered Machine, and this is an organization that focuses on finding practical solutions to issues within our community. So for us, we're working a lot in the Colorado area. And then Brian will talk more about our team's specific focus when he introduces our main goals and projects. Another thing that iGEM emphasizes is the importance of reaching out to our communities to inform them on issues that may affect them, as well as how they can help combat the local issues that we have been researching. After completing a bunch of research, iGEM also holds an annual competition called the Giant Jamboree. This is essentially a big science fair where high school, undergraduate, postgraduate teams all present their research to earn different medals for their work. The Giant Jamboree also functions to increase awareness of issues around the whole entire world that can be solved by biotechnology.
So the overarching goal of our iGEM team is to find an easy, quick, and inexpensive way to detect and degrade large and incredibly stable compounds called perfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS for short. Later, Cadet Till and I will discuss PFAS in more detail, but in short, this is an extremely important social issue as it's cost the US government billions of dollars to clean up just small portions of PFAS around the country. If our iGEM team can find a way to easily, cheaply detect and degrade PFAS, then it would save the United States and other countries dealing with similar issues a lot of money. So one big source of inspiration for our team to tackle this issue is that while much of the PFAS in the environment today comes from manufacturing sites and production plants, another portion comes from the firefighting foam that the military used for decades. This PFAS-based foam caused us to take a closer look at where PFAS goes and what it follows. To discuss this further, I'd like to hand off the discussion to Cadet Olivia Orahood and Cadet Conley Walters.
What's really in your water? Let's take a closer look.
There are lots of cool things that you can find in what looks to be ordinary water. All you need is a microscope. For example, here we have some algae and an organism called a diatom. Look how green it is. Diatoms are green because they contain a compound called chlorophyll, which stores sunlight to be converted into usable energy. And here's a closer look again at the diatom. Here we can see swimming algae. Look at that guy go. He's swimming in circles in search for food and nutrients.
Hi, I'm Annalise. And I'm Abby. And today we're going to be speaking a bit about wastewater treatment, as well as water filtration systems. And then once we know more about those, we're going to perform an experiment that you all can do at home.
Okay, so first we're going to talk about wastewater treatment. Anytime you use water in your house, it goes down the drain and goes through many pipes into a wastewater treatment center. The first stage is the water will go through many different screens so that all of the large objects and smaller objects can be removed from the water. Then the water will go to a holding tank where it lets the larger and more dense objects settle to the bottom and the less dense oils float to the top. Those two are removed and then the water moves on to the next stage. The next step is the removal of dissolved and suspended biological matter. The water is aerated so that some of the dissolved gases can be released, and it helps the organic material decay because it uses up oxygen to do that. And then lastly, the water is disinfected either chemically or physically. One example of this is with chlorine because it kills all the bacteria. All of these steps are taken so that the water can be released back into the environment and that it's safe to drink.
Alright, so now that we know about water treatment facilities, we're going to talk a bit about water filtration systems. There are a bunch of different types of water filtration systems out there, but I'm going to discuss three of the most popular kinds. One is called a GAC. This is a granular activated carbon system. This is one option to remove certain chemicals, particularly organic chemicals, from water. In this system, chemical contaminants stick to the small pieces of carbon as water passes through. Next, there are ion exchange resins. These resins are small beads that are made of hydrocarbons that sort of act as magnets with different chemicals. So as the waters pass through an ion exchange resin system, the chemicals will stick to the resins and then can be removed via the resins once the water is passed through. Finally, there's nanofiltration and reverse osmosis. This is a process where water is pushed through a membrane that has very small pores, and the water is allowed to go through those pores while the membrane acts to catch the other chemicals and other contaminants that you don't want to stay in your water. So now that we know some of the basics about wastewater treatment and water filtration systems, we are going to do an experiment that you all can try at home. Okay, now before we begin our experiment, we're going to go through all of the materials that we'll need to make our DIY water filter. First, you're going to need a 2-liter water bottle or soda bottle, whatever works. Then you will need some cotton. You will need fine sand, coarse sand, pebbles, and of course, some dirty water. Woo! So, another thing you're going to need are scissors or a knife so that you can cut your water bottle, and we'll get to that next. We want to make sure that when you're using something sharp, such as scissors or a knife, that you always handle them with care. Make sure that you cut away from your body when you're cutting different materials.
First, we have to cut the 2-liter bottle. The top half will turn over to act as the receptacle for our water filtration materials. The bottom half will rest under the filtration half to collect the water that has been filtered.
So next, you will place the cotton into the neck of the bottle. This cotton acts as the final filtration material and functions to filter out the smallest contaminants in the dirty water, such as small dirt particles.
When making the top of your filtration system, try to put an equal amount of each material. They should each take up about 1/3 of the space. You should also leave some room at the top for the water. The first material we're putting in is fine sand. The fine sand has the smallest space between its particles, so it catches the fine contaminants that are able to pass through the coarse sand and the pebbles.
When making your filter, the coarse sand is added after the fine sand. In this layer, the coarse sand filters out any rocks or clumps of dirt that are small enough to pass through the layer of pebbles.
The pebbles are the first material that the contaminated water passes through. In this section, the large items such as sticks and leaves are caught by the filter. Here you can see our dirty or contaminated water. Our sample contains dirt, leaves, sticks, and rocks. How gross! Now that your filtration system has been constructed, you can pour the water over the first layer of pebbles and watch it go. Here's a time-lapse video showing the process and the final results you can expect as your water passes through your filter.
Here you can see we have some water that is colored orange. This was just colored with food coloring. However, it can signify water that has been contaminated by different chemicals that cannot be filtered out physically. We will get to talk about this a little bit more in our next section, but this, for our research group, signifies how PFAS cannot be filtered out easily. Here's a time-lapse video showing how water contaminated by certain chemicals, such as PFAS, cannot be purified via this type of filtration.
Here's a picture of both of our filtration systems after all of the water has passed through. Notice how our dirty water on the right is much more clear than it was before. However, the orange water is about the same color as it was before it went through the filtration system. This shows how some chemicals cannot be removed from the water.
So for the last part of our presentation today, we'd like to just touch a little bit more on PFAS, what it is, why it's important, and why our iGEM project is such a big deal.
So PFAS stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which are a group of chemicals to include PFOA and PFOS, which are the two chemicals that are studied the most. PFAS chemicals can be found in food, commercial household products, drinking water, and even living organisms. So why is it important? Since PFAS chemicals are found in a wide range of consumer products that are used daily, most people have been exposed to PFAS. Studies indicate that PFOA and PFOS can lead to health problems, such as reproductive and immune system effects, birth defects, and hormone disruptions. That's where the iGEM team comes in. We want to figure out a way to help degrade these harmful chemicals in order to keep people healthy.
Exactly. So with these factors in mind, it's easy to see why our iGEM project is so important. These compounds can cause cancers that are not only difficult to find, but also nearly impossible to degrade. So if USAFA iGEM can easily, cheaply detect and degrade PFAS, it not only will save lots of government funds, but also lots of people's times. That's all we have for today. We hope you enjoyed the presentation and have a great, cool, sciencey day.